Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ask Why Medicine podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to be here with my friend and colleague, Dr. Daniel Jacobazzi. Dr. Jacobazzi has a most exciting and interesting take on his practice. I want everyone to know about it, hear about it, because guess what? Dr. Jacobazzi can see you no matter where you live. He has a great, expansive reach telemedicine practice. So, Dr. Jacobazzi, please introduce yourself for our listeners and tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice. And thank you so much for agreeing to be here today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Dr. Gina. I appreciate that. Uh, as far as my practice goes, let's start way back at the beginning. So I've been in healthcare for about 25 years now. And actually, how I got started was I was a pole vaulter even at the collegiate level throughout my entire athletic career. But athletic, I mean, I was good enough, but not great. That's okay though. I always had back pain and went through the standard medical NSAIDs, and they took x-rays and they said there was nothing wrong, and yet I had a lot of pain, and I even missed many big meets. Still bothers me this day. There's something called the Drake relays out because of pain. All of that actually led me away from medicine because my senior year, or rather my last year competing at Auburn University, I found a chiropractor, and I was told, don't go to him, don't go to him, he'll mess your back up. And my degree, both my degrees, undergrad and master's in engineering, I'm a very linear A, B, C, D, E guy. And all I could think was my back's already messed up. So it really can't get any worse. So what's the harm? And this guy was amazing. My back, I would go get adjusted. I feel great. And so I was actually leaning towards medical school, had all the grades and all that good stuff, could certainly have gotten in no problem. And then I realized I didn't want to go in that direction. And then I had another issue with a shoulder that ended up having surgical repair, which somebody who on the holistic side probably would have been able to avoid if we had known. And right from the beginning, it kind of led me down a different path, and practiced as a chiropractor for almost 15 years before then I went back to school, got a physical therapy degree because I wanted to expand in terms of what I was doing for patients. Did that for almost 25 years. And then things happened in life, and sometimes they feel like they're happening to us when in fact they're happening for us. And it led me into the direction I am now. I always kind of dabbled in functional medicine, and then
Mm-hmm.
the opportunity came to start helping patients with neuropathy. And for me, even on my side, where I always say the body, when we remove enough obstacles, will heal itself. I had always operated on the assumption that neuropathy was not curable and only a manageable condition. And fortunately, I listened to a good friend of mine, Dr. Paul Fisher, and he said, you got to check this out. And I did. And now my practice has morphed almost entirely to telehealth. And that is almost all I do all day, every day, is work with patients who are dealing with neuropathy.
I think if you would define it and go into neuropathy a little bit, I think a lot of people are suffering from this and may not even realize what they have going on. So you
Yeah.
could really help us with that. And then one other thing I'll say before you continue on is just that it's most common, and maybe it's only in diabetic patients. I don't know. You can tell us. And because there's a lot of contributors, right? Not just diabetes, but it's incredibly common in adult onset diabetes patients, maybe type 1, 2. I'm not sure. You can tell us that. And then I thought, I just want our listeners to know, when I started focusing on cardiovascular disease reversal, of course, I had to focus on diabetes reversal too. And I'm like, can we really reverse diabetes? I don't know. I'm like you, thought these things were just manageable conditions until we found out otherwise and learned far better approaches, right? These things can be reversed and stabilized. But my whole point about that is you and I were speaking earlier, and I thought, well, I've done the best I can do. We've reversed diabetes. This person still has some neuropathy symptoms. I just thought that's as good as it could get, because we were also taught, I'm sure you were taught like I, that you could manage it, but it would never go away. Kind of like a lot of the eye conditions that occur from diabetes, a lot of the other side effects, symptoms, downstream effects from diabetes, for example, the damage it's doing. I really didn't think it was reversible. So I've learned so much from you, and I'll be quiet now. And yes, please educate us on neuropathy.
Okay. When we talk about neuropathy, a large, I won't say misconception, but the perception is that it's always related to type 2 diabetes. And looking at neuropathy as a whole, in terms of the problem itself, there are actually three systems that are always involved. Number one would be the metabolic system. Number two would be the circulatory system. And then last, and of course not least, would be the neurological system. So we have these three dominoes. And what happens is we get some sort of metabolic inflammation, which is our first domino, which then tips over into the circulatory system. Then that inflammation spreads throughout the circulatory system, specifically out to the capillaries. And of course, capillaries get inflamed and then they close down, which now means that our blood flow becomes reduced below the acceptable levels for the body. That's our next domino, which then falls over into the neurological system. And of course, when the nerves aren't getting an adequate amount of blood oxygen and nutrients, the standard repair maintenance process that the body uses to maintain the insulation or myelin that protects the nerves stops, and then the nerves start demyelinating. Poof, all of a sudden we have neuropathy. And that's where medicine kind of fails in terms of that neuropathy in general, is they look at neuropathy as just a nerve problem and they don't look anywhere else. And specifically, they're so hyper focused on symptoms that they don't look at those other two systems. Medicine has become very siloed as well, meaning everybody stays in their lane. You have the neurologists, you have the vascular cardiology, and then you have gastroenterology, and nobody really seems to kind of connect.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go see this guy, go see that guy. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of somebody looking over the whole picture. So I think it's inevitable that things get missed. And when you mentioned earlier about, hey, I can reverse or I can now reverse type 2 diabetes, type 1 obviously can't. That's an autoimmune thing that's attacked the pancreas. And then, of course, their function is permanently impaired.
Mm-hmm.
For type 2, however, I can't say always, that's a big word, but I would say the vast majority of the time it can be reversed. And that kind of brings us back to the causes of neuropathy. I used to be in the camp thinking that, yes, the majority of it is type 2 diabetes, but there are actually four other categories. Number one would be the diabetes, prediabetes, insulin resistant, which of course is highly inflammatory. Then would be autoimmune. That is the second most common bucket, as it were. And those patients, we see ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, Hashimoto's, MS, all of these are autoimmune conditions, which again cause metabolic systemic inflammation, which then can affect the vascular system and reduce flow.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, toxins, chemotherapy, probably one of the most common toxins, Agent Orange. I've seen jet fuel from former service members. And then, of course, last but not least would be traumas can actually precipitate neuropathy because the extra scar tissue then reduces the blood flow and the body doesn't heal from that. And so that's kind of like a vicious circle going on. I see very often patients will have a knee replacement or a hip replacement, and then they notice those symptoms on that one side first, which means that then they automatically correlate to, oh, well, I had that surgery, so that's what caused the problem. And it didn't necessarily cause the problem, but it just accelerated it. And the nice thing about, I like things simple, is the nice thing about neuropathy is that it doesn't matter what bucket it came from. It doesn't matter what stage of neuropathy, and I'll talk about that in just a second, what stage of neuropathy somebody's in. You always have to address all three of those areas. You have to address the metabolic system, you have to address the circulatory system, and of course, last but not least, you have to address the nerves. And when I talk about stages for neuropathy, there are four stages, just like cancer. Stage
Mm-hmm.
one would be sensory, stage two would be motor, stage three would be balance, and then stage four would be the soft tissue breakdown, which leads to infection, and then of course amputation. And I've had patients across all of those stages I mean, obviously we can't make limbs come back, but even with those patients, we've had them do complete recoveries back to work. One of the most severe examples I ever had, a patient named Maria. It's actually been about a year and 4 months since she started with us. She's done though. She started with us in January of 24. Within 3 months, back at work full time, sleeping through the night. The burning was gone, and I'll be honest, she did all the work. I just provide the guidance, tell her what to do. She dropped her diabetes medications in half and still working on getting rid of them all the way. So it doesn't matter how far along you are, or even how bad you think things are, or even if somebody's told you there's nothing you can do. There are no worse words in our language, especially when it comes from a healthcare provider, then
Hmm.
there's nothing you can do, which is because it's not true. There's always something can be done. There may be a limitation in terms of the progression or the improvements you get, but there's always something that can be done. The key is figuring out what it is. And that's where when we talk about telehealth, I'll be honest, I was very resistant to that as somebody who's a physical medicine kind of guy. The chiropractic is very hands-on, the physical therapy very hands-on. It took me a a minute to get my head around the idea that I could provide care that was effective. And it was actually a case who at my office, Timothy, I won't say his last name, Timothy called me up. He's seen my ad. He says, "Hey, Doc, I live in Bolingbrook, which is like an hour and a half with traffic from the office. He's like, can't drive. And I don't want my wife to drive because she doesn't feel comfortable," which I get. I mean, they're crazy out on the roads here. He says, "What can we do?" And at that point, I hadn't done any virtual. And I said, "I don't know, Timothy. We can try it, is the best I can say to you." And Timothy was, again, a walker out in public, not driving, like you name it. It was a lot of bad news for him. And of course, the doctors told him, "You're just doing the best you can, Timothy. Just gut it out." We started him out within a month and a half. He was driving. He actually texted me, he said, "Hey, Dak, you'll never guess where I am." "Where you at, Timothy?" I'm like, I don't, because I don't know. I really didn't know. He's like, "I'm at he had an oncology. He had a lot going on. He had an oncology appointment downtown." I said, "Okay, well, that's great." He's like, "I drove here." "Oh, well, that's really good." He's like, "Yeah, without my wife, did it all my lonesome. I'm doing it." He had a cane at that point. By the time we got done with him, he started in, I think it was October. By filing June, the last text I got from, I still touch base with him every once in a while, but the last news text I got from him says, "Guess where I am? Where you at, Tim? Where in the world is Timothy? Where you at, Timothy? I'm at the Cubs game with my grandson and my son, and
Oh,
da 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 da, and no cane. He did have some drop foot, so he's still wearing his AFO. But the change in terms of his mobility and it was very, like, even within 3 months of treating him, I realized he's getting results that are just as good, if not better, than my in-office patients because he's treating every day. He had the equipment at home. The guidance is always for type 2 diabetic. He's type 2 diabetic in terms of like what we eat and what we need to do. So that didn't really change. That was always at home. Once we provided him the equipment and he was treating twice a day, AM and PM, the results were phenomenal. And it was that point I was like, you know what? I feel very comfortable
wow.
expanding. And so then we started the whole online program and we get on the social media outlets and we do our ads, and it's been a blessing because it's great job satisfaction, number one, but number two, the reach is just so much more. I mean, it's like I have patients in Hawaii, I have patients in California, Maine, Arizona, Texas, Arkansas, Mississippi, I mean, like New York, like everywhere.
Mhm.
It's Wisconsin, Minnesota, South Dakota, all of those places. And it's great because telehealth has allowed me to reach patients that had been told neuropathy is incurable, there's nothing you can do. And a lot of them, back on the type 2 diabetes, they should have never, ever been in front of me
Mm.
because the doctor, and I think you told me the story the other day about a cardiologist saying that there was nothing you could do, that you shouldn't even bother to give them recommendations in terms of how to eat. That's just that's just like apathy. Healthcare providers should never be apathetic about their patient's condition. Just like
Hmm.
just give up. Is that the that's unacceptable where I'm from, at least from my perspective. And
Hmm.
I hear a lot of times the reason, my understanding from what I've heard from patients, is that they're saying, well, the doctor just said eat less carbs. What? I mean, like the lack of specificity for depending on whether a patient's type 2 diabetic or autoimmune or chemo, there's lists for each phase of the program. If it's not on the list, don't eat it.
Hmm.
And then I still get questions, well, I didn't see so and so on the list. Well, no, you didn't. It's not on the list, so don't eat it. So, it's really, again, been a wonderful thing. And again, the results are well over 90%, which is just outrageously successful from outcomes standpoint. It's been, and again, it's just been very enjoyable. And
Wow.
I've yammered on enough. And again, that's also kind of what brought us together. Our good friend Andrew talked about you and explained about your history and like how you're dealing with the same situation, but from the standpoint of the cardiovascular. And of course, all of whether what it is you're doing or I'm doing, all of it starts with that metabolic system and inflammation, and that's our anchor for healing.
Yes, absolutely. And the first intervention is to change or at least look at what you're eating, right? And many other things. How are you moving? How are you sleeping? All of those things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was kind of an add-on when I was rounding in the hospital and discharging people. It was like, oh, try to give them a handout or something at
Sure.
discharge. And you and I were speaking about it. All the information I was handing out, we now know is so wrong, so wrong.
Yep. Yep. It's
Oh,
very interesting. Like when we talk about patients to be like, well, can I eat oatmeal? Absolutely not. It's terrible for you.
yeah.
It's just like a sustained insulin release. Oh, I didn't know. Wayne, a great example. Wayne, he's from Kingman, Arizona, and he is also a year and 4 months. He started with me, machinist, and his job is working standing. He was missing at least one day a week because the burning in his feet had gotten so bad, and gone to the hospital. Nutritionist didn't understand. He was very confused. He's doing everything that they're telling him to do, taking his medications, managing his type 2 diabetes with the medications, and he was waking in the morning at 257 to 270. Yeah. Waking. So he had been fasted for 8 hours and his sugars were that out of control.
Oh
And
man.
I believe after, I think it was 6 weeks, he was waking at 157.
Wow.
And that was all eating. Wayne, I will give it this, as with, I'm sure with your practice and definitely with my practice, it doesn't matter what we say because the most important thing is always going to be the same thing, the patient.
Hmm.
Those patients who are motivated and dedicated, and again, nobody's perfect. That just doesn't happen. Although I will say Maria was pretty close to perfect. The one she had the double amputation and she recovered amazingly. But you don't have to be perfect to get results. There's good enough. And then
That direction.
that's right. And so it's just, you just got to tip the balance a little bit. You get a little momentum and it gets easier and easier and easier. And then you go from going uphill to feels like you're going
Mm.
downhill in a good way. You're not stressed. And Wayne, he's getting a little greedy. He talked to me the other day. He's like, I still have a little bit of tension in my legs. I'm like, okay, how about the burning? Gone. How about the jolting? Gone. Okay, you have a little tension in your legs. He's like, well, yeah. He's like, and now I say it out loud, it sounds a little bit silly, but so I got to keep doing my equipment. Absolutely. And I was like, how are we doing eating? I'm doing very well. And then I asked how your sugar response is because I know you're cheating, Wayne. So how are your sugar responses? He says, boy, I can eat a cookie and it still sends my sugars up and they stay up for a long time. And that's the other battle that medicine doesn't seem to understand is there's no instant fix. It takes if your sugar response, your insulin response has been off for a decade, it's not going to reset in 12 months. It's just not going to happen. I mean, realistically, we're looking at 18 to 24 months.
Yes.
And even then, you don't want to get into a situation where you're tempting fate again. You're not going to fall in the same behaviors that ended you up in that predicament. And
Hmm.
once patients are told and once they're explained to them and they have understanding, like Wayne again, first thing he did was they went through his cupboard They threw out everything that wasn't on the list, and he sent me a picture of his countertop. It was filled with stuff. He said, "I'm gonna go give everybody the food bank diabetes." So he gave all the food away, which I know is a good thing. Obviously, I'm joking. They went back with then he and his wife went out and they filled the cupboards with everything that was on the list, filled the refrigerator with everything's on the list, and he got a great result.
I think that's an excellent point because there are people that, like my daughter is this way. She, or when my husband was alive, if they happened to bring home candy or if we had cookie or something in the house, like she and he might have one. Okay, every now and then I think I'll have a little something. Me, if it's in the house, I'm gonna eat it. Like if it's something like that. Back in the day, it's like, oh my goodness, I would go to the bottom of the bag sometimes on these things. So even if you're not that kind of person like me, now that unfortunately my husband has passed away, but I live alone. But the great thing about that is, I would have to say, we talked earlier about how these things happen. We want to say to us, but they happen for us. So there's been great lessons in all of that. But one of the nice things is in living alone, and if there's anyone listening that does live alone, don't bring it home. Just like you were just talking about, was it Timothy that got rid of everything else?
Wayne,
That was
yeah.
Wayne. And yeah, like if you open up my fridge and people have done this, they're like, I'm starved in this house because I don't bring anything home unless uh, I don't have a list, but in my mind I do, unless it's on my list of things that I really want to eat because I know they're going to reverse or stabilize any cardiovascular disease if I have any. And same with diabetes. So yeah, don't bring it home. Good
Yeah,
girl.
that's a very interesting thing about the psychology because patients think that they have to have strong willpower, and
Mhm.
man, everybody's going to lose that battle. I like when we talk, like we'll talk about the gut biome for just a second, right? So we have 300 to 400 trillion bacteria in our gut, like, basically like 5 pounds of bacteria. Those
Mhm.
little guys are all hardwired directly to our cerebellum via the vagus nerve, and that controls our hunger and our cravings.
Mhm.
That's below conscious control. You are going to lose if you try and fight that, which comes back to the less decisions you have to make, the
Mhm.
less likely you can make a bad decision, which means if
Yes.
you set yourself up for success, you're only one decision away from either A, being successful or not.
Yes.
And that starts in the grocery store. Stay on the outside of the grocery store.
Mhm.
Avoid the middle, the death zone. We want to avoid the middle if at all possible. And that's where Wayne told me. He said it got so much easier when it just wasn't in the house. Did I still want it? Yeah. Yeah, I still wanted it, but it wasn't there. So I had to do something else. And that's everybody. Like the patients who I start asking, even the people who are autoimmune, have autoimmune issues, whether it's the rheumatoid arthritis or the ulcerative colitis or Crohn's or IBS, whatever it is,
Mhm.
they're just like, did anybody ever really talk to you about how to set yourself up for success? And then I explained it, and they're like, that's really simple.
Mhm.
Yeah. We're not taking a rocket to the moon here. We're just not. It's pretty one, two, three. And it's not motivation that's going to make you successful. It's consistency. And if you create the lane for yourself to be consistent and
Mhm.
make it easy for yourself. Why would you want to tempt yourself with bad decisions? It's not a challenge. You don't have to challenge us. We have enough challenges. Make it easy for yourself. Make it simple. Yeah.
Yes. And no, I'm surprised how easy then it has just morphed into. And now I teach patients this. You kind of had that list in your mind, even though, like I said, I don't have a list. I guess I do in my mind. Like I will eat real food. Let's start there, meat primarily, and vegetable or whatever is on your list. But when I go somewhere, let's say I'm going to go to a party or eat out with people or whatever. Okay, so there everything is available, but I know what I will and will not eat. And so that's one way to win the not necessarily willpower war, but when you start to feel so good, you know how you're going to feel if you eat anything that isn't what feeds your body and helps you function at your best, right?
Absolutely, yeah. They have got another all these anecdotes. Cliff, who started with me, and he was kind enough to give a testimonial because his progress has just been outstanding. He
Mhm.
started with me mid-February of this year. He had a little ulcer on his
Mhm.
ankle right after Thanksgiving last year. I'm sure that's not a coincidence. He probably ate like garbage all through Thanksgiving, which is,
Wow.
I mean, that's easy to do when all that food is there and all those sweets. So he gets a little dime-sized blister, it pops, it gets infected.
Mm.
It gets progressively larger. By the time he got to me, it was a postcard-sized wound on the outside of his leg.
Oh.
And they were telling him that, hey, if we're doing the wound care, it just keeps spreading. If it
Mm,
doesn't stop, then we're going to have to do something,
mm,
or it'll spread. And
mm.
he took the leap, trusted in me and trusted in the program. And within 3 weeks, it's like, let's see if I can find it.
Okay.
The change was phenomenal, and I bring him up because I'm going to pick on him. That
Good.
he
I'd love to hear his testimonial if that's what you're going to read or his story.
Yeah,
He's-
I don't know if I don't know if
I'm assuming he did not go to surgery. This thing
he did
healed.
not. No, and I don't know if I lost his pictures, unfortunately.
Looking for that.
Yeah.
I just want our listeners that are probably thinking, well, I have some tingling, or well, this occasionally I feel this, that, or the other. How would you know to consider neuropathy? I imagine people come with you with a variety of presenting symptoms. Why would someone suspect that maybe it's neuropathy and think about calling you?
I'll start with, you don't need a fancy, painful NCV test to tell you have neuropathy. Yeah, patients know. They just don't know what it is. They know something's not right. They just don't know what it is. And it can be something, restless legs. That is, and I can't say always because I've not seen every case of restless legs in the universe.
Hmm.
Everybody that's come to me that's had restless legs, even if they've been able to manage it with magnesium, which is typically what they're told to do,
Hmm.
is basically an early stage of neuropathy. It can be numbness, it can be tingling. Like again, we'll go through the stages. Stage one, numbness, tingling, cold, burning, pain. So because
Okay.
that's where the smaller nerves get affected because they don't have as much protection. So that breakdown, that demyelination affects them first. From
Mhm.
there, then it's the cramping. So patients can feel like my toes feel stiff or my arches feel stiff, my ankle feels kind of sticky, my
Mhm.
calves will cramp at night when I lie down to go to bed. That would be typical presentation. Or sometimes the patients describe it as, I feel like I'm wearing boots, like galosh boots, but they're filled with concrete. So my
Mhm.
legs feel really heavy. And then that carries us into stage three, where that's the beginning of balance issues. And patients, as you probably know, and I'm pointing at all you guys out there, have a knack for denial. And one of the kind of the flags that I'll hear is, well, I tripped on a cord, or I tripped on a rug. And then I'll ask, well, I tripped on the rug in the living room and then I fell. How long has that rug been in the living room? 20 years.
Oh.
Okay. So something's changed in that ability to kind of feel where the foot is, and then they catch it on stuff because they're not lifting it up enough because they're losing that connection with the proprioception. And that comes the balance. And of course, the falls, that's a big deal because everything can change so quickly with the fall. I had one
Huge.
patient who fell, and their relative happened to come over when they were unexpected. And had they not come over,
Mm.
they don't know what would have happened. And then of course, like with Cliff, and I did find Cliff. So this I'll do a trigger warning real quick for everybody, okay? So it's
Good.
not pretty. So this was actually, let me find out where he started here. I'm gonna find the one that he started with if I can.
Okay.
Oh, there it is.
Great.
Okay, got it. And so this is where he started. And so this is, again, this was November of 24. And
Okay.
it's not a big deal, but you can see this area of redness,
Hmm.
which means that it was actually infected way back when. And narrow ankle, everything's okay. Well, then by the time he got to me, this was my previews. By the time he got to me, this is where we found him. Oops. And so can you guys see that?
Oh my goodness. Wow.
See that
Wow.
again, you saw where it started. It was just like a little dot there, and it just kept spreading. And you see how angry all of this skin looks, and excoriated and very dry. And then I'll close that one so I'm not using as much memory. And then after 3 weeks of doing the right thing, This is
Hmm.
where he was at. All,
Wow.
all of that area is gone. I don't have the other one. He just sent me a new one where all that's left is just this and this. This is completely gone, and the color is much, much better.
Wow.
He was told, hey, we're doing everything that can be done, but they didn't tell him how to, and I'm going to go somewhere with the eating here. I didn't tell him how to change his eating, didn't tell him that there was any possibility of reversing the type 2 diabetes, which is absolutely driving his, I mean, that was just the locomotive that was just shoving him down the tracks.
Hmm.
And he cleaned his eating up within a month and a half. He's lost 25 pounds
Wow.
just from cleaning his eating up. And then he usually texts me every 2 or 3 days, like progress, because I'm his new best friend, which is great. Like I love that. That's a wonderful thing to be able to help me. He's helping himself, but to give him the tools. Saturday evening, he texted me, "Hey, I haven't had burning in my feet for 3 days. It's been like three or 4 years, maybe even five since I like it feels great." And then I don't hear from him Monday, Tuesday, and then Wednesday afternoon, I get a text. Oh boy, I messed up. So what'd you do, Cliff? It's like, it was my granddaughter's birthday. And he didn't go in with the plan, right?
Hmm.
Ice cream and cake. He said his burning was back like boom, right? I mean, it's just only a month and a half, 2 months in. Man,
Yeah.
that sugar spike, the insulin inflammation should. And he said it took me from Sunday afternoon when I ate my cake and ice cream to Wednesday afternoon for me to get back to where I was feeling okay. And that highlights if you're following the plan, you can fall off the plan. You just gotta give up. You just get back on it. Just
Mhm.
back on the horse, so to speak, and again back on track, and everything's tracking very well. The healing's continuing, and again that all goes to nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes. Just have a plan and
Hmm.
work your plan.
Wow. What an incredible story. That's great. Wow.
It's very exciting when I see those kinds of changes for patients.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, and a lot of the symptoms that you've talked about too, that you were saying earlier, like trip or my balance isn't good or whatever, we tend to normalize and think, well, I'm getting older, or that
Well,
goes on
yep,
aging, or whatever. And
absolutely.
not that it could be something else, and it could be repaired, reversed, fixed, whatever. Not just, oh, now I better go see the doctor. I probably needed medicine for this, whatever it is.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, and so you brought one of the other things patients will say, well, I just can't walk as far as I used to. And
Mhm.
they just think it's just because they're getting older and they're deconditioning, but it
Mhm.
can be pretty rapid. They're like, I went from being able to walk a mile to tired and I can't walk but 2 or 3 blocks, if that far. That that can be neuropathy as well because it's called fatigability. The nerve loses its ability to carry signal because it's breaking down at the ends, and so then the muscles aren't getting the energy that they need to fire and contract. It's all, like I said, all those systems are connected. Again, whether we're talking about the metabolic system or the circulatory system, the cardiovascular system, which is of course your focus, again, also with the metabolic or the nerves themselves. Patients, unfortunately, these days really have to be their own advocate. They have to look out for themselves. As sad as that is, the experts aren't focused on the lifestyle and the metabolic tools that will help them age. Forget aging gracefully. There's like minimize aging and then stay active and stay vital and all of those things that we mobile independence is huge. Well, we don't want to be stuck in a home.
Yes.
Goodness
Yeah.
no.
For sure. And this, I know, I mean, you may or you may not have your shingle out or whatever is a longevity
Right.
practice, but this is a
Absolutely.
longevity practice. Like if you want to live long and you want to take your last breath in a blissful physical condition, this is the program you need as well. But the other thing I wanted to circle back around to is two things. One is you were talking earlier about how long it can take for someone to finally get those blood sugars stable and finally your fasting isn't still going up or
Right.
whatever that is. I think that, or whenever you're checking it, I think that there are a lot of people, and I don't know if you call it a spectrum or what, but there are people that I say they're just pulling out of the garage with a little bit of insulin resistance. Like it's early stage. Most doctors would look at the labs and go, oh, great. They wouldn't say a thing, but there are so many clues, even just on an annual lab review. But my whole point about this is, don't you think there are people, I think I see them in my practice, I know I do, and I haven't had neuropathy on my radar, so I'm definitely going to keep my radar up for that now, but that are in this early stage, if you want to call it a spectrum. I don't know if you do or you don't. It's not like you wake up tomorrow with diabetes, but this
Oh,
has been
absolutely.
going on a long time. Your body's trying to just turn it around and you're working against it, right?
Absolutely. It is absolutely a spectrum of symptoms, and it doesn't happen overnight. If we're looking at 12 to 18 months for, and this is all hormones, but especially with insulin, cortisol is involved in that one as well. If it takes 12 to 18 months to dig ourselves out of the hole, then it takes us at least as long, because the body's healthy, it's going to compensate. So it takes us at least as long to get into that situation.
Mm.
Unfortunately, because the body is so clever and good at
Mhm.
compensating, we don't notice any symptoms. And
Yes.
back to labs, like when somebody says, well, my A1C is 6 and that's okay. No, it isn't. 6 is way too high.
My gosh, yes, yes. I had a gentleman come to me, 65. He said, well, I don't know what you can do for me because my doctor told me there is no way that I will get my hemoglobin A1C under 6, probably won't get it under 6.5 because of my age. No, he never gets anybody under 6.6 anyway, maybe under 6.5 at age 65. That
That's
has nothing to do with it.
No, that is ridiculous. That is ridiculous. And then I had one patient who's very interesting. Their A1C, and I think it was because so this is the medications. Medications, they're pretty clever. They can actually lower the A1C with some of the more what I would call exotics like Jardiance, Trulicity. They actually will bring the A1C down. Well, if you look at you can't cheat the TGL HDL. So
Mhm.
triglycerides over HDL, you can't cheat that. And
No.
this fellow, I can remember his name now. Peter, Peter B. Thin, good shape.
Hmm.
A1C was 5.8 or something like that, pretty good. And then I said, "Hey, can you give me your triglycerides and your HDL?" And it was like 4.6.
Oh my word. No.
Yeah. And we like I don't really want to see anybody over 2,
Hmm.
but like 4 is like maybe like your C minus grade, and he's 4.6. I'm like, "Bud, this is what's going on." And he's like, "Why doesn't everybody ever notice that?"
Yeah. Yeah. That's
I don't have
wild.
an answer for that, unfortunately.
Yeah. Right.
But at least
Yeah.
we had an answer to what the problem was. And so
Exactly.
it's very interesting. The reliance on labs. Hey, good, you're good on paper. Well, who cares how I am on paper? Am I functional? How's my body working? We do what I call as an inflammatory index. So there's like 17 specific questions about the operations of all the body systems, and then we
Mhm.
score it. That's just as sensitive for me in terms of finding a problem with inflammation as as a blood test, because
Yeah.
blood only tests blood. Our body's expression of health is in the functioning of our systems. So,
Yes.
yeah, right. So
Oh,
if we have elimination problems, or if we have skin issues, or like whatever it is, all of them, I mean, those are all clues that we need to pay attention to, and probably pay
yes.
more attention to than just worrying about our labs.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with you. And I love that idea because that's probably a way for people's eyes to be opened. In other words, when you see a blood sugar that is whatever it is and an insulin level and triglyceride HDL, and you try to convince another person, a patient, that this has got to be addressed now, and they're feeling fine, maybe they're 30, whatever. It's really difficult sometimes for them to embrace the fact that this is incredibly significant. You will have problems down the road if you don't start looking at this now. So if you fill out a questionnaire and you've even got a few things on there, maybe it would add some, I don't know, power to getting them to embrace these new concepts
Little
that,
urgency. A little
yeah.
urgency. A good example, actually, I just had a consultation yesterday. This guy is not a dummy. He's a hedge fund manager. Like
Mhm.
he operates at a very high level. And then I look at his A1C is 9.5. And he says, well, all my other blood work is okay. I'm like,
No,
dude,
it's not.
you are killing yourself, man. Like, I don't need to see anything else to know you're in
No.
deep, you know what? I was like,
Yeah,
whoa. But he
right.
kept coming back to, but all my other labs are okay.
Yes. It's really scary. And you and I were talking about how one of the reasons we wanted to do this podcast is to get this message out there, to be louder, to get a far wider reach, because I've had patients just like that. In fact, one that has not signed up with me. They keep calling, they keep circling around. This is some of the things he said. My whole family has diabetes. My brother and sister had diabetes. My parents had diabetes. And my doctor said, there's nothing you can do. And they keep going back to their doctor, and maybe they adjust the meds or change the meds. And this is just diabetes, and your family had it. It's in your family. Oh,
Yeah.
that's such a lie, such wrong information.
It's yeah, I can go on a whole rant about that. That again, as a healthcare provider, our goal is to provide tools and information and empower the patients to heal themselves. A good doctor, this is something that they passed around in chiropractic school, is
Mm,
back in the medieval times that you paid your doctor while you were healthy. And then when
mm,
you got sick, you stopped paying them until you got
mm.
healthy again.
That's good.
So this whole reactive response to, well, I'm not going to go in or I'm not going to do anything until the house is on fire. No, and that's medicine, that's programming through all of the media, and take a bill. Ask your doctor if blah 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 is right for you.
Yeah, right.
What?
Mm,
No,
yeah,
that's completely the opposite of what health. I mean, the health expression of health. We're not trying to control symptoms. We're going to try to improve function. And again, yes, that's where that survey is helpful, because they add it up and then they start rationalizing, bargaining. Well, maybe that wasn't so high. And they knocked down a few points. And I was like, you're still at a 10.
yeah, yeah,
Under 5 is where we want to be. And I mean, obviously 0 is perfect. And they're like, whoa, wow. And that helps them connect. And
mm,
it's very difficult because I won't launch into a tirade against pharmaceutical drugs.
yeah,
No drug ever solved anything. It just gave the body time to heal itself. And patients patients don't know better. They're relying on their doctors. The hedge fund guy was interesting. He said, "Well, so if I were to ask my doctor, she thinks she's doing the best for me, does she really know that treating my diabetes, managing, what he meant to say really was managing
yeah,
my diabetes with medications isn't going to solve the problem. What would she say? She'd say she's doing the best thing, that she's doing the industry standard for you, and she
yeah,
doesn't know any better." And
that's right.
he wanted me to be candid. As well. I mean, he's like, that's kind of disheartening. I said, it can be. It can
Hmm.
be, especially from my side where I'm sitting here. It's really not my job to convince anybody to do anything. They have to make it like you got that guy that's circling. What he doesn't
Hmm.
know is actually circling the drain.
Yeah,
He
that's
doesn't
right.
know that. He
Yeah.
doesn't know that, and he's only one decision away from totally turning himself around and reversing his diabetes. He just
Hmm.
hasn't connected those dots yet, and a
Yeah.
lot of that is the pressure coming from the outside. I've had patients, Joanne, she's
Yeah.
from South Bend, Indiana, and she signs up, and
Yeah.
it's not free. It costs money. Insurances, they're unwilling to cover anything that actually fixes a problem. They don't want that. A customer cured is a customer lost. They're in the subscription business. They're not in the, it's not prescriptions. Those are subscriptions. Don't kid yourself. And
Mm.
she said that her son found out about it, came at me and giving me all kinds of hell about signing up. And you shouldn't spend that money. There's no cure for neuropathy. And she checked in with me. I'm trying to get him to come on to do the testimonial with us. He's very resistant. But he finally, at like about 2.5 months in, said, "Ma, I gotta apologize.
Yeah.
I'm so happy that you did what you did, because I haven't heard you complain about your symptoms once." And she was having difficulty sleeping and keeping up with the grandchildren, which are like seem to be biggies, sleep and grandbabies. And she's like, "I don't have problems with I sleep." And he said to me, he's like, "I haven't heard you complain once about sleeping. And,
Mm.
and I can see you're more engaged with the granddaughter.
Hmm.
So I'm glad you did it." And that feels good. You get a little bit of affirmation there from somebody who was like vehemently opposed. But again,
Yeah.
it's not his fault. He was told by her doctor, because he goes to her doctor visits. Sometimes you're told by her doctors, nothing you can do. Nothing you
Yeah.
can do. That's crap. It's
That's
garbage.
right. Yes, it is. Indeed, it is. Wow. Well, one thing that I think listeners will leave wondering, so I want to touch on this before we wrap it up. So, does Dr. Jacobazzi recommend vegetarian, vegan, plant-based, carnivore. I know you said you individualize it for everyone, but if you met somebody at church or in the grocery store or, at a party or whatever, and they said, well, just, I want to eat better. Where do
Sure.
I start? Give us some top items that we can put on our list that we can say, well, he doesn't know anything about me, but at least these things are good for me.
Whole foods. Whole foods. I'm not a fan of plant-based only. It's very, very difficult. We got pointy teeth for a reason, right? I mean, like the tearing and rending of flesh. Maybe it's just the reality. And of
Mhm.
course, red meat would be my favorite macronutrient because it has all of the aminos that we need. There's no substitute. If push came to shove, and I'm not saying go carnivore,
Yeah.
but if push came to shove and you only had one food choice, it better be red meat because you can survive on that. You can literally not eat anything else and survive on red meat.
Yeah.
I've tried everything, not
Mhm.
plant-based because that's that I don't, yeah.
Mhm.
I won't go on that. And no offense to the vegetarians, just the reality. It's a whole lot easier to be healthy if you've got a quality source of protein, and beans aren't going to cut it. They just don't. They don't have the same aminos, and you better be supplementing if you're taking a vegan or vegetarian diet. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry to if it hurts your feelings. It's just the reality.
I agree with you. One quick question there. Don't you think it's very difficult to get the labs in order to get someone healthy if they're totally vegan? You mentioned high quality source of protein like supplemental. Even with supplemental, I'm just not as successful with people who, for ethical or spiritual reasons or whatever, they want to be vegan or vegetarian even.
It's harder. I mean, I do have a vegan/vegetarian program, and those patients do see improvement. It's just not as quick.
Mm,
They're
mm.
not getting everything they need. And again, whether it's spiritual or ethical, I get all that.
Yeah.
It just it makes it, it's a higher hurdle to get to where you're going. And when we talk about whole foods, where proteins like red meat, chicken's okay, turkey, venison, like buffalo, like those kinds of things. Fishes are fine, but we don't ever want to have farm raised stuff. It
Mm-mm.
has to be wild caught. Otherwise, you don't want to know what they're feeding those fish. Right? Or
Right.
even, and I'll pick on chicken for just a second. How do they make the chickens fat?
Mm.
They feed them arsenic.
Oh my word. I was going to say grains, arsenic, even worse.
It plumps them right up. They put on a lot of weight. Well, and that accumulates in us. So that's why I don't eat a whole. Even my wife, who's like a hardcore white chicken girl,
Mhm.
she's eating significantly more red meat. And of course, my little guy, he's like, you give him red meat for every meal, and he'd be happy as can be, which comes back to biomes. His gut biome is set and established to crave those foods. And of course, he's a rail and he eats an obscene amount of food, and certainly he's growing. And even recently, you know, my wife is my worst patient. Nobody tell, but my wife is my worst patient because I'm her husband. I don't know anything. And and finally she started listening because somebody else told her what I've been telling her for the last, I don't know, 5 years, and integrating more red meat and following it. I have finally was willing to enroll in one of my programs that I do for gut health, and darned if she hasn't lost like 25 pounds that she's not been able to get rid of.
Wow.
She's still not going to admit I'm right, which is fine. I don't care. She's much happier, and obviously she's much healthier, so that's a win. But like when we're eating, it's just as simple as, again, staying on the outside of the grocery store. Those vegetables, we do want to avoid nightshades, tomatoes, eggplant, white potatoes. Those are highly inflammatory to our body, actually. And
Okay.
of course, like citruses, fruits are nature's way of concentrating sugar. You can
Mhm.
do apples or lower GI, berries,
Mhm.
blackberries, blueberries, raspberries, but everything in moderation because they do have oxalates, which we have to be careful about. I'm throwing in
Mhm.
all these words. Don't get caught up in that. Just all things in moderation and to follow a whole food eating list, and
Mhm.
you're going to be just fine. Yeah, it's pretty easy.
Yeah. Meat, vegetables, and maybe a little carefully selected food,
That's
fruits. And
that's
avoid
it.
the nightshades. Yeah.
Yep,
Uh,
absolutely.
there
Absolutely.
was no oatmeal, there was no grains, there was no bread, there was no crackers in what you just said. So, yeah,
No processed foods, and
anything.
patients think, oh, brown rice is good. No, brown rice is processed and spikes sugar. So
Yeah.
that like
Yes.
if you need carbs, amaranth, sweet potatoes, quinoa, actual wild rice, non-processed wild rice if you need those carbs.
Mm,
That's where we'd go. And don't be afraid of like dairy's a kind of a so like don't be afraid of butter though. If you're not dairy sensitive, load up the butter. You're not, fat doesn't make you fat. It's the carbohydrates, specifically the processed carbohydrates that make you big. So it's so much simpler and the food can be plenty tasty, and a little bit on the salt thing. So there was an actual study, and I don't have it unfortunately in front of me. The recommended dose based on health, and I can't remember what metric they were using, was around like 5,000 milligrams a day. That's a truckload of salt. And then they also did a study where they showed that eliminating or limiting salt had no effect on blood pressure. Zero.
right.
So salt, which is something that satisfies us and makes us feel satiated,
Hmm.
and it curbs our appetite, our need to eat more, is told we're told that it's really bad. It's really bad. It does
Hmm.
Cutting out salt does nothing for your blood pressure. Zero. So don't do it. Salt your food. Use good salt, right? So like the Celtic sea salt or something like that. Don't
Hmm.
use the iodized stuff that they throw at you. But yeah, so again, there's so many things out there that patients are told. It's not the things that get you. It's not the things that you don't know that get you. It's the things that you know to be true, and there's no doubt in your mind, and it just ain't so.
They just think so. That is
That,
correct.
that's
Yes.
that's where patients get in trouble, and they're like, I didn't know, and they can't know because they're just bombarded with misinformation. Yeah.
Right. Yes. And I think that also that's why people think that to eat healthy is like awful because for so long, like they didn't know that you can like salt it, you can use butter. I mean, really, I think eating meat's my favorite thing because it's so good and you can do so many things with it. It's so versatile and it's so simple and there's so many reasons. Not that I didn't have trouble at first when I was giving up the donuts, but now it's like I just it loses its appeal. It really does after a while because you see your benefits on a daily basis.
And the bugs change.
And the bugs change. You said that earlier. Yes, thank you for reminding us of that. Then your bugs crave more beef or whatever,
Yep.
butter.
Absolutely. Your biome changes to diet, and it's a battle. I went through intermittent fasting it took me, I think, 18 weeks because I could demolish a bag of tortilla chips, no problem. Once I started, it was a zoop right
Yeah.
down, and I didn't have a weight issue, so I was like, I thought I was okay, but now I knew better. I just didn't do better, and
Hmm.
did an intermittent fasting kick where I starved those guys out.
Mm.
That changed my biome. And afterwards, I can eat 3 or 4 chips now and be okay. Whereas
Hmm.
before, there was no stopping because those guys, so it's there. Nobody's perfect. I keep saying that. I mean, least of all, I mean, I make mistakes too.
Yeah.
And of course, if I'm put in front of a bad decision, it's there. It's certainly easier to make, right? And so we avoid
Right.
that. And now we don't have an issue. So my little guy does get some of those chips and stuff, and they're here, and they are unmolested. I don't attack them anymore. So they're okay.
Oh, that's great. Well, I could talk to you for hours. We've learned so much. I really appreciate your time. We'll also put in the comments and along with the podcast your contact information because I know we'll have people that want to reach out to you and seek out your care. That's for sure. You're doing great work. I
Thank you.
so appreciate all of the education you've given us. I appreciate what you're doing for your patients and that you have a far reach. So no matter where you're at, think of Dr. Jacobazzi and give him a call. And even if you're not sure if what you have is neuropathy, I would say call because there are plenty of people that really wouldn't call it that or wouldn't think they have a problem. Think about it, as you've said, if your balance isn't what it used to be, if there's any kind of uncertainty, would you say below the knees or in the legs?
Like I see patients, I mean, at the top, we're seeing memory issues,
Uh-huh. That's going to improve.
brain fog,
Yeah.
or I'm just getting slower. My recall's not there. And that all comes back to gut and metabolic system inflammation, which is systemic.
Circulation.
And
Yeah.
it's systemic. It's everywhere. So it's affecting everything. It's incredible that you start connecting all these dots and they always come back to the middle.
Yeah. So would imagine, you can tell me if this is true, that your patients say, "Wow, I did this because my legs hurt or my legs tingled or whatever. But now I can think of that word I was looking for when I was having trouble pulling up, or I can do math.
All
I
the
was
time.
having trouble doing math the way I used to, or whatever it is. Other things get better, right?"
Absolutely. Yeah, I was speaking with this woman who's like works in pharmacy and medical slash pharmacy slash medical, and
Mhm.
she's and before she started, I'd be on the phone, and she's been doing it for 25, 30 years. I'd be on the phone, and like all of a sudden I get stuck, and I know the words there, and I just like she's like I couldn't access it, and now they're coming back, and it's getting easier and easier. And like so all of that again comes back to the gut health, and that's not normal aging. It's not normal.
No,
It's not
no.
normal. It's common, but it's not
Hmm.
normal
Yes.
for sure. For sure. So
Yes. Well, that is a great way to end. Absolutely. So don't think that it's normal. If you're experiencing anything that's raising a question mark in your mind, there is likely a way to not just treat it, no, not just manage it, but reverse it
not
into.
just treat it, not just treat it, defeat it. Absolutely.
I like it. I
Right.
like it.
Okay.
Anything else you'd like to say before we wrap it up?
I just thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure, and it's great to know that I'm not alone in this tilting at windmills of fighting the good fight with natural health and helping patients find a real path to health.
Yes, yes, absolutely. It is great. We need more like-minded, and there are
Yeah.
slowly, there are
Got to
more
get all
like-minded
together.
healthcare professionals. Yeah. So it's great
Absolutely.
to see, because it's great to see the results. So keep up
Well,
the great work.
thank
Thank
you
you
as
for
well.
being on. Thank you. And hopefully we'll have you back again, because again, I've got some more questions that we could ask you and learn from, but our time, I think, is limited. So
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Gina. I appreciate you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye.